Protecting yourself from occupational cancer risks. Routes of exposure. Did you know that firefighters are at a higher risk of developing cancer than the general population? They have a higher risk for many types of cancer like bladder, colon, prostate, cervical, breast, ovarian, thyroid, melanoma, brain, leukemia, myeloma, and testicular cancers. In reality, it's not possible to eliminate all the hazards you face, but you can minimize and manage them. Leaders play a very important role in minimizing risk by setting risk management standards and enforcing rules and policies that protect crew members from the hazards associated with cancer. And firefighters can minimize their risks in a number of important ways by protecting themselves from the routes of exposure. Routes of exposure. Inhalation. The best protection from inhaling toxic fireground gases and contaminants is making sure you regularly use your self-contained breathing apparatus, a CBA. In many circumstances, you may be the one at the highest risk if you don't use your SCBA. For example, firefighters aggressively attacking a car fire without using an SCBA is one instance where the tactics don't match the reality of the situation. This is especially true if there are no exposure or life hazard concerns, such as an occupant trapped in the vehicle or a vehicle on fire threatening to extend to an occupied dwelling. Absent of those concerns, the firefighters are the sole life hazard. Remember that a well-involved vehicle fire is not salvageable. An emergency restoration company won't arrive on the scene and board up the windows like they do following a structural fire because it doesn't meet the criteria for the preservation of salvageable property. So, take a tactical pause. Let the reach of the hose line extinguish most of the fire while you approach the vehicle. After the fire is largely extinguished or knocked down, then move in with the tools needed to open the trunk, engine compartment, and passenger compartment. While it's important to open these compartments to ensure complete extinguishment, the minute or two delay to allow for knockdown and extinguishment will result in a significant reduction of exposure to smoke without sacrificing any potential tactical advantage. In other words, there's only a benefit to this tactical pause. Absorption. Removing contaminated particles and gear is another important protection. Fighting fires, particularly stubborn and smoky fires, can result in your skin absorbing particles, which is one of the primary exposure routes and perhaps the most difficult to protect against. For example, in the words of Fire Chief Frank Lieb, "I remember a fire I responded to when I was a battalion chief. The fire was located in a large Chinese restaurant that had issues with its floor. So instead of replacing it, they installed a second one over the original floor. The fire was between the two floors on the first floor. It was a very stubborn and smoky fire. We operated for several hours, cutting away the floor inside the restaurant to expose and extinguish the fire. After the fire, even after many days and showers, I could still smell the fire on my skin. It got worse when I went to the gym and started sweating. I noticed a smoke alarm at the gym and jokingly thought that the scent might set off the fire alarm. My body was off-gassing what it had absorbed." Firefighting gear, designed to protect from heat and other potential fireground hazards, does not adequately protect against the absorption of gases from the fire. This is primarily due to the interface openings of our gear. Absorption is one of the primary exposure routes for firefighters and perhaps the most difficult to protect against. So make sure you use wipes on scene, take a shower as soon as you return, launder your uniform, and put on a clean uniform after all fires. Ingestion. Finally, while you need enough food and liquid to sustain a high level of firefighting activity, eating and drinking on an emergency scene can be one of the greatest potential ingestion and cross-contamination hazards, particularly via contaminated hands on shared food. For example, in the words of Fire Chief Frank Lieb, "I've been on the scene where pizza's delivered, and the fire scene suddenly feels more like a pizza party. Dirty hands of the hungry firefighters grasp for a slice, many likely unaware of the potential hazard of ingestion, tired and hungry following a strenuous fire attack. Contamination transfer takes place from the firefighter's hands to the crust of the pizza as I think to myself, the only thing that would be worse would be serving Kentucky Fried Chicken because it's finger-licking good. I inform the firefighters of the risk and urge them not to consume the now contaminated pizza crust, as I think to myself that we can and must do better both in the quality of the food and in protecting our firefighters from ingestion and cross-contamination. To reduce cross-contamination from ingestion, consider serving food that's calorie-dense, easy to consume, and minimize cross-contamination, like energy bars and packaged foods. Regularly use proper hand-washing stations with soap and water before eating on the scene. If possible, get back to the firehouse to clean up before eating to minimize the overall contamination. There are many actions you can take to protect yourself. Understanding the routes of exposure and the steps you can take to minimize your exposure is one way to better manage cancer risk.